All right, good evening, hi, and welcome. Okay, this is kind of like a part two.
So I was finishing up in the last video, and you can go watch that one before you get to this one, of where the kids are learning and stuff like that. And now what they've done, like when I was a little kid, they had like, Sesame Street, and, they teach you how to count, and they teach you this. They still have Sesame Street. It's gone woke, I know that. But back then it wasn't, You had Mr. Dress Up. Everybody loved Mr. Dress Up. You had the Jolly Green Giant. He was always cool. I always loved that little castle thing, and then all the little chairs and everything. Like, I want that. It's cool. And Jerome the Giraffe and all that. And there was a bunch of other ones, right? And Mr. Rogers. So there was always, and it was always education based, right? So it just got you going. It just got you going, right? For little kids. It was kind of like, okay, when they're at home off of school, they could watch this, and it wouldn't just be mindless entertainment. There was an actual sort of an educational element to it, even if it was very, very, infantile. You know what I mean? But now what they got is these little cartoons and stuff like that, where all it is just weird sounds. So the kids are now, apparently it's especially under the Gen Alphas, which are the youngest generation right now. And the oldest of the generation, I think, is like my nephew. He's 11, right? So 11, 12, I think maybe even 13. I think they're just becoming, it's amazing how fast these generations grow up. So Gen Z, like some people are still talking about Gen Z, but Gen Alpha, they're like us Gen Xers, nobody pays attention to them. And I think that's the problem. But they're learning like just sounds, like real, like weird things like that. They're making all these weird sounds going around the house, mimicking these commercials or cartoons that do, that's all they do is like these weird kind of gaga goo goo type sounds. And it's creating arrestive development amongst the kids. They're not learning how to speak properly. And a couple of years ago, because of a certain situation, kids also were experiencing arrestive development because they couldn't see faces and they didn't know how to form words and stuff like that. So we got a whole generation that's going to be very primitive, which has a lot of dangers as they grow up, because the more caveman-like you become, the more aggressive you become, and the more impulsive you become, right? So we could see a very like a retardation in mental decline in kids because of arrestive development, you know what I mean, as they become adults. So we won't know this for another couple of years, but it is something that it's a crisis. And the thing is the only people that can stop it are the parents. But the problem is the parents have been propagandized to just throw your kid in front of the TV, either put a controller in their hand or put a cartoon on, right? And yeah, sure, it's always kind of been that way. But like I say, us Gen Xers, you did, if it was a nice day, your parents kicked you outside. You only sat in front of the TV, which you only had 3 channels anyway, 4, 5, and 13. I mean, I had to walk all the way across my shag rug to turn the channel each time, and then adjust the bunny ears, accordingly. So kids really didn't spend that much time watching TV. They'd watch Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that. There wasn't cartoons 24/7, right? And the cartoons now, they're all woke. That's the one problem. So there's that problem where cartoons should be like politics. It should be neutral, but we know that's not how it happens, right? So these poor kids are going to grow up without, like I was talking in, especially kids that are going to struggle a bit, like myself. When I was younger, I had learning disabilities, like the dyslexia and stuff like that. And I don't wear it as a badge of honor because I don't have it anymore. You know what I mean? But I had to, what taught me was a teacher sitting down with me and saying, no, okay, you see this is, read it out. And that's how she figured out I had dyslexia. She was, I want you to read it out loud to me, right? Not so much that the other kids could hear. And she said, oh, okay. So she asked me, do you see words kind of backwards? I said, sometimes, yeah. And she goes, well, that's dyslexia. And she explained it to me. She says, okay, we're going to fix this. And she did. And then computers came along, and it made spelling even easier because it became mechanical, because I'm a mechanical person. You know what I mean? Like, at 12 years old, I could probably build, a big block engine. Just because I was a hands-on, I could fix things. I've always been that way, and I'll always be that way, right? I'm like that now. My mechanical reasoning is off the charts. You should see me cutting down Manitoba maple trees. And the only reason why I can cut them down, typically without getting killed, and I'll explain it to my buddy. I said, see this? There's energy, there's a force here, there's a force here. That thing's going to twizzle, right? And I could read it. Why? Because I got mechanical reasoning to be able to do that. So, you can figure things out really, really well. And some people are just better at that stuff, and other people are better at the books, the academia and stuff like that. But the thing is that these kids are not being taught that. They're being taught, basically, the new education system is, you do math by feel, not by numbers. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I came to this conclusion. There are no wrong answers because 2 plus 2 can make 4, etc., etc. This is an absolute disaster. We got kids that can't read, they can't write, they definitely can't spell. Cursive is a completely, they'd never be able to decipher it, let alone, actually write it. And I'm not saying I was the best at it, but I'm saying at least when you have those basics, it helps you. That's to help you navigate the world as an adult, right? They don't understand how banking works. Now, mind you, modern banking isn't the same as it used to be. Like when I was going to school, as a teenager, they said, okay, they'd go get like a bunch of bank books from the bank, that they were throwing out, and they get the students to fill them out and say, okay, we play what we called the lobster game, and we did this every Friday at school. And what the teacher would do is if she'd roll 2 dice, and if one dice came up odd and one came up even, the traps you had set in the high risk area were gone if it was an odd number, and you doubled your profit if it was an even number. The traps you had in the safe zone, you still got half. You still got half, and if it was an even number, you got double, right? So what it was teaching was 2 things: risk and how to manage money, and how to manage a small business. These were lobsters. It was all fictional, and you wrote it down. And by the end, and then when you got that, you got paid. You had to go pay a certain amount out of your bank book, and because you had to pay for your traps, you had to pay for this. You had to subtract that, and then you had to add the balance of what was left over. So it taught you how to do banking. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm talking like 13, 14, 15 years old. You're learning how to do this, right? And then, of course, bank cards came along and stuff like that, made things a little bit, bank books are kind of a thing of the past. There are still, I'll still see when I do go in the bank, I'll still see the old a senior come into the bank and hand the teller a bank book, and the teller's like, what's this? It is kind of funny, but like the new banking now is all digital, right? So they need to know this. But they don't want them to know too much because of the evils of the banking system, right? But anyway, yeah, so we're not teaching our kids properly. We're dumbing them down like at an extraordinary rate. And I think people need to be very mindful of this because it is pretty terrifying. Because these are the people that are going to inherit the world when we get older. Scary. Anyway, there we go.